What is up, guys? Team Yuki Fails here with another video, and today, before we jump into the video, I want to give a big shout outs to my locals, Imperial Gaming and Collectibles, located here in the northeast portion of the United States, for having the coolest supplies ever. They get all these cool custom play mats that they make, their custom sleeves now they have, which is really cool. They're hosting a very large in-person event on August, I think, 7th or 8th. It's the weekend of the 7th or 8th. I'm pretty sure it's the day. I'm pretty sure it's the Saturday, so I'm pretty sure it's the 7th. Pretty large tournament, which is going to be really cool. Very fantastic shop owners, super down-to-earth, nice guys, always there to help and give you as much information as possible. So go ahead and check them out. I think I'm going to leave their website link, that's a pretty new website, down in the description below, so go ahead and check that out. But before we jump into the video, I want you guys to go ahead and smash that subscribe button, obviously turn the notification bell on, and on top of that, make sure you give the video a thumbs up too, because that's always helpful. It gives me a little extra confidence to do more videos and everything, and find the time in my schedule to produce all this stuff for you guys. So let's jump right on into this. Alrighty, so today we're taking a look at Madolche's. This deck is, in my opinion, ridiculously underrated. I think this is one of the best rogue decks that you can really pick up right now and play. It has like a huge ceiling of things that it can do, in addition to a lot of space to fit a lot of hand traps or regular traps in, depending on how you really want to format the deck. But I think that one of the coolest parts about it is the fact that it just can play through a lot of boards. There are ways to play through Nibiru, and on top of that, you can OTK extremely easily. That's really a big thing with this deck, is that OTKs are everywhere. You can find them very easily. So let's go ahead and take a look at our main deck. Okay, so main deck, we're going to start with our monsters first, obviously. The best starter in the deck is our 3 copies of Madolche and Madolche. You normal summon her, and you get to search for any other Madolche in your deck, which is very, very powerful. This is like one of the OG Madolche cards. Not anything newer for support. This card's been out forever, and this card is just busted. Being able to grab like any Madolche monster that you want and grab it to hand, which typically when you grab a Madolche monster, one of the most important ones that you want to grab is one of the new ones, which is our Petting Cessor. So Petting Cessor reads that basically when you have no monsters in your graveyard, you can special it from hand. If you played Adamantipator before, you probably recognize this card because it was played in Adamantipator. And then when it is special summoned, you can special summon a Madolche monster from your hand or deck, and you can decrease its level by 1. Which we'll get to why that's important later, but essentially it's a special summon from hand or deck of Madolche monster, which is going to help extend your plays even further. Then the other extender that we have, 3 copies of Madolche Angeli. Well, I should say Angeli is more of a starter, not an extender, because it gets your engine going. But basically, you tribute her and you special summon a Madolche monster from your deck. And like, if you tribute her and you special summon Hoot Cake, then you get a free special summon with the Hoot Cake by banishing her from grave. So using the Angeli gets your engine going the way you need it to, which is fantastic. Definitely a good starter. Not the best starter in the deck. Like I said, Madolche is the best starter. But if you draw the Angeli, it's definitely something that you can play with. Now, this is something that I think is actually really important. I don't see a lot of people doing this, but I think going forwards, this is going to be very important. And that is 3 copies of Madolche Hoot Cake. A lot of people play 2, which for a while I was playing 2. And I thought that 2 is perfect because I didn't really want to draw it. But now with the way the meta is and how we have to play a decent amount of hand traps, we are going to want to banish a lot of our monsters from the graveyard. And having Hoot Cake is definitely a reason to, play hand traps like that, because you get your hand traps in the graveyard, then you normal the Hoot Cake, you banish the hand traps, and you get to special summon from deck, which is very, very powerful. So Hoot Cake, in my opinion, is a 3 of now for that reason. 2 copies of Messengelato. As much as I'd love to play 1, you can't, because if you draw it, then you're screwed. You do have to play the second one, unfortunately, and it does come up frequently. Like, being able to just loop your searches over and over again is actually busted with this card. You basically get all of your spells and traps into your hand, which is crazy. Then the last Madolche card that we play is one Pudding Cess. This card is typically what you're going to summon off of your Pudding Cessor, because it'll drop it to a level 4, and then you can go into your rank 4 plays, which is actually very, very important. Like that's one of the main lines of the deck. Like that by itself enables OTKs, which is crazy. So keep in mind that having that there is important. But the effect of Pudding Cess essentially is not as important. It's more so that the card itself, when it's equipped to a certain Xyz monster that we'll discuss, allows you to do some really, really crazy stuff. So keep in mind, it's more so for the effect while it's attached to an Xyz monster, which we will see when we get to the extra deck, and I'll explain a little bit more. But moving on to our hand traps now. We're playing one of the best hand traps in the game right now, if not arguably the best hand trap in the game right now, that not a lot of people talk about, and that is 3 copies of Dimension Shifter. This card is absolutely disgusting. There's not a single card right now that completely shuts down an opponent's board as much as Dimension Shifter does, because this card destroys Drytron, it destroys Shadal, it destroys Tri-Brigade, everything that could be close to relevant. It destroys Prank Kids too, that's another important one. Anything that's like partially relevant, this card hurts. And right now, if you go off of another website called YGO Scope, I think it's .com, I'll have to look. Maybe I'll link that in the description too. But this card just does an insanely large amount of things against almost every single deck in the meta that's relevant. You can see on that website, YGO Scope, as to what the current most frequently played decks are and their win percentage, which is also very important. It's something that I use fairly often now to try and look and just see what's being played, so I know what to expect when I go to tournaments. But the Dimension Shifter is fantastic because it just outs every single graveyard deck, which is really, really good. Then we're playing 3 Ash Blossom. So the cool part is if you open up like Dimension Shifter and Ash Blossom, obviously you have to use the Shifter first because you have to have no cards in grave to activate it. But when this is in the graveyard, you can still discard your Ash for the effect. And the reason that you could do that is because Ash does not send to graveyard, it just discards. So that discard effect is actually very important because you can still activate it under Dimension Shifter. Then the last monster that we play in the main deck is 3 copies of Fantastical Dragon Phantasme. One of the cool parts about playing this hand trap is that you can draw it into your Dimension Shifter, and it doesn't put hand traps in grave. So the fact that it doesn't put any hand traps into your graveyard makes it so your graveyard is still empty, so you can still draw into Dimension Shifter and discard it, which is nuts. This card's also really good against Sky Striker because they really just lose out on like a Widow Anchor activation, which is very important, being able to cut that off. So 3 Phantasme is awesome. But those are all the monsters. We're going to move on to our spell lineup next. We're playing 3 copies of Salon. Salon is like Gem Knight, Seraph Knight. It's an extra normal summon. And then when you shuffle into your main deck Madolche monster, you get to set a Madolche spell or trap from your deck, which is really, really powerful. I'm going to show a combo at the end of the video with opening just this and 1 copy of Madolche, because that's like, that's a ridiculous combo. So Salon is really good. Then we play 1 copy of Chateau and 1 copy of Ticket. You really don't want to draw these. You want to either set them off Salon or search them off of your Messengelato. Either one is fine, but you don't want to play multiples of either of these. It's not good. Then we play 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity because our extra deck runs a very large amount of multiples. We'll obviously get to that. So you have the ability to get rid of a lot of your extra deck and not worry about it, and still have so many cards that will out a bunch of your opponent's cards. Then we play 3 copies of Triple Tactics Talent because this card is fantastic whether we're going first or second. Obviously, we want to go second more than anything because OTKs are pretty sweet. But there's going to be times where our opponent either makes us go first or we know what they're playing and we don't want them to go first. So Triple Tactics Talent is a fantastic card and it puts in a whole lot of work. Then for the one-ofs, we play 1 Feather Duster and 1 Called By. The Called By is kind of like another copy of Talents when you think about it. I thought about cutting Talents down to 2 just because like I have a Called By in there already. But I honestly was kind of stumped as to what I would even want to play in place of the the triple tactics talent, so I just opted to stick with the called by and the 3 talents, and it works very, very well. Those are all the spell cards, though. We're going to move on to the traps. It's only 3 trap cards. 2 copies of Promenade and 1 copy of Gravedigger's Trap Hole. So these are 3 traps. So Promenade is fantastic because essentially what you get to do is you get to negate an opponent's card on the field, the effect of it, and then you get to bounce one of your Madolche cards from your grave or your field to your hand. So like, let's say you have a Madolche in grave, you get the Madolche back to hand, and then you can just start your whole combo the following turn again, and you get to negate one of your opponent's cards in the process. Promenade has a secondary effect where you can banish it from graveyard to equip a Madolche monster as an Xyz material to an Xyz monster on your field, and that basically lets you loop your pudding cess over and over again too, which is really crazy. And then Gravedigger's Trap Hole, this is here for a Nibiru, so you can guess one of the cards in the extra deck already, so I feel like I don't have to spoil it because I already have. So yeah, we basically play Traptrix Rafflesia, and then you dump this off Rafflesia and it stops Nibiru, which is pretty cool. That is the main deck, though. We're going to go ahead and hop on over to our extra deck and take a peek as to what the Madolche strategy has for us in the extra deck. Okay, so now we're moving on to our extra deck here for Madolche, and the extra deck, like I said, does have a decent amount of multiples, so that's why Pot of Prosperity is a really good card in this deck. It just puts in a whole lot of work. So looking at the starting lineup here, we have 3 copies of Glass Souffle. Glass Souffle has a really, really powerful effect where she can detach a material to make herself unaffected for the turn from your opponent's cards, basically. And then she has another effect where while she's on the field, if Madolche is sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle up to 2 cards from either graveyard into the deck. So you can get rid of pesky Drytron cards, you can get rid of Beasts or Beast Warriors in your opponent's Tri-Brigade graveyard. There's so many different things you could do with this, or you can always just shuffle your own Madolche cards if you need to. So Souffle is a very, very powerful card. Then we have 3 copies of Tiramisu. I need to upgrade these to an actual foil rarity because the commons just aren't doing it for me. But this card essentially is a Dragoon out, which is really disgusting. This card, I didn't realize how good this card is with the whole non-targeting ability until like I started like testing it out, and I saw the fact that, you know, the card was able to just get around boards that like this deck should not be able to get around, but it does, because you can shuffle up to 2 cards on your opponent's field by shuffling up to 2 Madolche monsters from your grave, and then they have no more Dragoon and they don't know what to do. So Tiramisu is a very, very powerful card. Really, really love that card. In addition to that, like being able to shuffle back plays into Madolche strategy too, so you can actually trigger other effects at the same time. Then we have 2 Chocolate a la Mode. This is the card that I was referring to with the whole attaching of Pudding Cess having an additional ability. And basically when a Madolche monster in your graveyard is shuffled back into the deck, or, you know, sent to your hand, you can detach a material while the Pudding Cess is equipped to her as a material, and you can special summon a Madolche monster from your deck, which is really, really good. I don't think you need 3 of this. 3 is not that great. I like the 2. The 2 works really, really well. Then for our next Xyz monster, we have the Rafflesia, which I mentioned before. It's really just here for the Gravedigger's Trap Hole. Essentially, if you open up with the Salon and Madolche, you can start with the Rafflesia combo, which is very, very good. We'll get to that, and I'll show you guys that combo because it's actually very important. Up next, we have our flex spot in the extra deck. I'm playing an Xyz monster for it because I think it's actually really good. I've been like looking at a lot of the meta and seeing what people are playing, and considering there is a large amount of Tri-Brigade, you can assume that some people are going to play the Wind Barrier statue. In addition to that, some people are playing like Invoke Shadal, so people are going to make Winda. So if you open up that same combo of the Madolche and the Salon, you can instead go into your Castell, because what happens is you're going to get 2 normal summons off of your Madolche, because the Madolche is going to search for another Madolche, and then you can make Castell, and you can make it because it's a wind against the Wind Barrier statue, and then you can shuffle the Wind Barrier statue, which is really good, or you can always shuffle a Winda into the deck, and then your opponent no longer has a way of stopping you from special summoning. So Castell is actually very, very powerful. This card is actually nuts. So definitely consider playing Castell. If you want to play something else, go for it, but I think that those 2 reasons are more than enough to consider it at least for a flex spot. Then the last Xyz monster is the 1 Zeus. Doesn't come up a lot, but occasionally it does, and when it does come up, it definitely comes in clutch. I actually did a test hand earlier today, and the Zeus came up, and it actually would have been disgusting in that situation. So that's actually really cool. But moving on, next is the Link monsters. We're just playing 4 Link monsters. 2 of them are our Madolche Fresh Sistart. This card makes it so your Madolche cards basically can't be destroyed. Like your spells or traps. Like, it's actually very, very powerful. The fact that they can't be destroyed by card effects, and neither player can target them with card effects when it points to a Madolche monster. Like, that's crazy. And then the cool part is, if this would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can shuffle Madolche monster from your graveyard into the deck instead, which can then chain other Madolche cards on your field. So I think that Sistart is a really good card, but I don't think you need more than 2. I think 2 is perfectly fine. Then we're playing 1 copy of Ossa because this card is crazy. One of the cool things that I think is going to come up a lot is that you're going to get hit with like a hand trap by your opponent's Sky Striker deck, and then you can use like Triple Tactics talent to steal their Link monster, and then you can just link their Link monster and one of your Madolches into Ossa, and then you can just keep playing the game, and they don't get their Ray back, which is actually crazy. So Ossa is actually really cool. And then the last monster in the extra deck is our 1 copy of Access Code Talker. You can make this with Sistart, you can make it with Ossa, whatever you want to make it with. But this comes up every once in a while as well. It's just like Zeus. It doesn't come up a lot, but when it does come up, it is very important. So keep in mind this card can be definitely a quick clutch win if you play your cards right. But that is the entirety of the extra deck. We're going to go ahead and hop on over to the side deck and see how we're countering the meta and side decking appropriately. Okay, so side deck time. Side deck is, it has a couple hand traps in it, but then it has some other cards that I think are very, very important. So let's jump into the monster count first. We have our 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird, because there are a lot of decks currently that are doing a pretty large amount of adding, and if we can cut that off, that's always better. You could hit this against like Invoked, you could hit this against Drytron. Decks like that, you're going to want to drop a Droll against because you're going to be able to cut them off. Sky Striker too, that's another one that this card's actually pretty relevant against, so Droll is actually insane. Then the next card, I think that this is a crazy card, and well, this whole entire archetype I think is crazy, and more people should consider playing it, and that is 3 copies of Gamseel, the Sea Turtle Kaiju. I think Kaijus overall right now are actually very strong. I think that they provide a very large amount of balance, because if you tribute a Sky Striker Link, they don't get the Ray back from Grave, and then their entire back row is basically shut off from the Gamseel, which is nuts. If you're playing against Drytron, you get rid of their Herald, and then they're basically going to try and just unicorn you once, and that's all they're going to do. And I mean, there's a bunch of other decks too. If your Prank Kid's opponent doesn't use their Battle Butler, when it's summoned, you could always tribute the Butler with this, which is actually really good. So there's a bunch of decks that are honestly really good with Gamseel being in your deck, because you can just cut off their big card that they're playing and make it difficult for them to actually interact with you. Then for the spells, we have 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More. I didn't want to play Droplet in this deck only because I didn't want to like overflow my graveyard. I wanted to like kind of have things be a little more balanced than that, so I opted to just play the Dark Rulers because I didn't want to like send a bunch of my monsters to the graveyard. And I think the Dark Ruler is fine. You don't have to OTK with this deck, but once you set up a board, your opponent is going to kind of struggle to play around it. Then we have 3 copies of Lightning Storm, because spell and trap removal is important, and on top of that, you can bait monster negations with this card too. Or you could blow up a board of monsters. Either one, you could do either. So I think Lightning Storm is actually very powerful. And then the last card that we play is 3 copies of Evenly Matched. Evenly is actually super busted, this format, I feel. Not a lot of people are like really considering evenly either, which kind of shocks me because the card kind of plays around a lot. Against Tri-Brigade, this card is crazy because you do this against them and then they're probably going to keep the revolt and that's it, and then you just have to play through a revolt, which, if we're being realistic, it's not that hard to play through one revolt, especially in this deck where there are unlimited extenders. So evenly is actually pretty sweet. That is it for the side deck. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you guys that 2-card combo, because I feel that that's something important to know. Everything else kind of plays similarly to that combo, but there's obviously a million different ways you can play into it. So let me go ahead and set that all up, and I will show you guys the combo. Okay, so I'm going to try and show you guys here the combo to the best of my ability as far as like explaining things and how they work. Hopefully it all comes out understandable, that way you guys can comprehend as to what I'm doing. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume that the only hand trap our opponent has is like Nibiru. We're just going to make that assumption. So we normal summon the Madolche, we get the effect, and we get to search for another Madolche. Then we activate Salon, we get an additional normal summon, so we summon the other one, and then the effect will add us a Pudding Cessor. From here, we're going to overlay these two, and I like to put them in the far left, and we're going to make our Rafflesia. So now we're already guarded from Nibiru, and that was only 3 summons. We have no monsters in grave, so we special summon the Petting Cessor, and we get the effect, which will special summon the Petting Cess from our deck. Then we get to overlay these two into a copy of Glass Souffle. We're going to use her effect and detach so she's unaffected. We're going to assume our opponent chains Nibiru, then we could do the Rafflesia at that point. And I'm just going to detach a Madolche. This is the only card that I didn't pull out of the deck to show the combo. So we send the Gravediggers, and it gets their Nibiru gets negated. They take 2,000 damage, blah, blah, blah. Then after that, we're going to overlay the Chocolate a la Mode. Then a la Mode's effect is going to shuffle our Madolche into the deck. And then we get the effect to detach, which is then going to special summon from our deck. Oop, I'm sorry. So this is Chainlink 1. This is Chainlink 2. So the ticket gets set off that, and then we special summon a Hoot Cake. And then when the Hoot Cake hits the field, we're going to use the effect to banish the Petting Cess from grave. I'm sorry, Glass Souffle. You always banish the extra deck. This gets banished from grave, and then Hoot Cake is going to special summon the Messengelato. Messengelato's effect will trigger to add us a Chateau, which is actually pretty important. We're going to activate Ticket. That's actually something that you really want to do. Then we can link these two, and we can make our Sistart, and then we can activate the Chateau, which I'm going to put right in the center here. The Chateau's effect triggers, and we'll shuffle our Madolche cards from our graveyard into the deck. Then that'll actually trigger a couple of effects here. We're going to trigger the Ticket as one. I'm sorry, just the a la Mode. And the Ticket, actually, yeah. So we get the Messengelato and the Hoot Cake. Both get special summoned back from the deck. The Petting Cess goes back in. The Messengelato triggers, and we get to search for our Promenade. We can set the Promenade, and from here we can literally pass our turn. So we've played through Nibiru, and on top of that we have the Promenade, which is going to be another negation. This is actually really, really strong, and if you're going second, it's actually pretty strong too. So it's definitely something really, really cool. I think that this is awesome. Just off of 2 cards. This is off of Salon and Madolche that you get this. So if you want to do like the math as to what we end on, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So basically 2 cards net you a plus 10, which is kind of disgusting. Plus 10 off of 2 cards is not something that you see very often. So it's really, really strong, powerful combo. And additionally with that, after you use the Promenade, let's say you bounce the Hoot Cake and everything, you can get other effects. So you can get Salon's effect and Ticket's effect. So you get to search. So you can literally grab another Madolche to your hand, and then you can set from your deck another copy of Promenade. And then when this is in the grave, during your turn, you can actually banish the Promenade to re-equip the a la Mode here, which is actually really good. or if you want to do like a bunch of looping with it, you can keep that in the grave, and then you can normal the Madolche and then get her effect to search, which we would then get our copy of Petting Cessor. So the Petting Cessor would go to hand. Then you can overlay these two, and you can make like a tiramisu. And when you make the tiramisu, you have a couple options here. The one that I'm going to do is I'm going to detach to shuffle just the Messenger Gelato. So we're just getting rid of one of our opponent's cards. But when we do that, we actually get the effect of Ticket to special summon, which is really, really strong. And we're going to get Angeli, and I'll explain why in a second. Now, you don't have to get Angeli, but I'm doing it for this purpose because it fuels our graveyard. Then we're going to banish the Promenade. You would attach it to the Tiramisu, and then you can do the a la mode. So now you have multiple triggers with a la mode, which is really good. But you can use the Angeli. This is what I was talking about. You tribute it, you get the Hoot Cake. And then you can go Hoot Cake, banish Angeli, and you can special summon your Messenger Gelato, which is really, really good. Now keep in mind, we have not used Petting Cessor yet, which is kind of crazy that we haven't used Petting Cessor yet, but right now we really can't because we'd put stuff in grave. But that's also really good because one of the things that we can do, which I think is really, really disgusting, is the fact that we can like link a bunch of stuff off and we can go into like even crazier plays. So like we could get rid of like I like to keep the Messenger Gelato just because it's going to be a big attack stat. So we could link these and we can make like an Axis Code Talker. Like that's just game. Like there's nothing that your opponent can really do with that. So I think that this deck has a lot of potential going forwards. I think that there's a lot of plays that people don't realize are super powerful. A lot of searching, which is crazy too. So hopefully that was a pretty good explanation. You guys learned a little bit from watching this combo and some of the ways that the deck functions and works. But that it brings us basically to a close. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to smash the subscribe button, turn the notification bell on, and obviously leave a comment down below of the cool decks that you guys like that you have seen on the channel so far. But for right now, this is Team Yugi Fields signing out.